Hi there, Simon Whale here. Delighted to have with me Glyn Trott of Calmony. How are you, Glyn?
I'm good.
You are good. And we're here today to talk about, I think it's fair to say, can't really understate, one of the biggest ticking time bombs in the lettings industry that's actually happening at the moment. But hold that thought,
Okay.
because before then, I want to introduce, of course, David Mintz as well. Now, David, we've got you on because when we were talking about this to Glyn, you were absolutely outraged, I think it's fair to say, isn't it?
I was outraged because I think we as an industry are sleepwalking into a massive crisis around client accounting, and we're not talking about it.
And that's what we're here for today. So let's talk about this. First of all, we're going to talk about it. It's fair to say that this is on the back of 2 years' work that you guys have been involved in, but critically that this white paper that you're putting together, that we're going to put out links that you're going to be able to register to get access. Everybody is going to want to get access, trust me on this. You've been looking at this, doing some quite in-depth surveys with lettings agents. Do you want to just give us a bit of background about it? Talk about what the issue is here.
Yeah, so back in 2018, 2019, we started to sort of see a trend with agents who were getting their client accounts closed, or they were coming to CRM providers and saying, look, bank now tells me I have to open 100 client accounts. How's the software going to manage it? And then we just suddenly started to realise where it was all coming from. So it was a 2018 AML directive from the EU, which asked the banks to strengthen their controls around AML. And that actually knock-on effect then is really starting to see these agents, our client accounts are being shut down.
That EUA, there's still causing us issues, aren't there? Shouldn't it all just be happy now? I mean, okay, so let's just look at that though in terms of, because this is something that everyone's going to have to deal with, isn't it?
Yeah, so with this survey, we surveyed about 170 agents responded.
Yeah.
We're very careful as well. We're asking, have you had a problem with client accounting? Were you worried about having a problem, or have you not had a problem at all? So we got a good sample base. And really one of the first findings we sort of discovered, and it was quite obvious. We asked the agents, had a problem with client account? Yes. Had you asked your bank for the CMP letter? So every year, you need to ask your bank for a letter to say it's still a ring-fenced client account, and then give that to your CMP providers and insurers. That seems to be the trigger. So the banks, when you go and ask that letter, they then go, ooh, we supply you a client account, well, let's have a look. And then at that point then, the banks are doing a review, and they are either closing the account, changing it to a business account, which means the agent's breaking the law, or asking you to open up a client account per tenant, and in some cases, per landlord, and in some cases per tenant.
Because there will be a lot of agents watching this out there that say, well, I've not heard anything about this. It's not a watershed moment where it all happens on one date. This is coming in incrementally. If you've only recently asked for a CMP letter, you're going to find out about it. But this is a ticking time bomb that is likely to be picked up at any point in the next 12 months.
Well, I'd always say to an agent, if you've asked that letter and you've not heard back, you're under review. Because normally it's a really straightforward request to your bank manager. Can I have a letter to say it's all good? And a couple of days later, the letter's in the post.
This is cheerful. This is really, it's not like lettings agents haven't had enough thrown at them in the last few years. Lettings, fee ban, GDPR, everything else. Now this is, and look, I'm no expert in lettings, but having an account's quite important, isn't it, Glyn?
It is indeed.
It is.
It is indeed. I think for me, the real moment, I used to be an agent, 3-branch agency, 800 properties, and when I suddenly realised, thinking about it, if I was an agent and I lost my client account, that's my livelihood. I cannot collect management fees. That is staggering.
And a lot of those agents are going to say to you, well, I've got an impeccable record with my banks, I've got a relationship manager, we've been using the same high street bank for months. They're not immune to it.
Are you telling me that the banks are not doing the right thing, those pesky...
What I'm saying is, it doesn't matter how well looked after you think you are by your personal manager at a bank.
Yeah.
They cannot help you.
And just to clarify, we can't not ask for that CMP letter, can we?
No,
so
must.
I was going to stop the interview there, but just don't ask for it, because you need to have that letter year on year.
Yeah, it's part of your accountant's report, part of that sign-off. So when CMP providers require your accountant to come in to do that check, one of those checks is please provide a letter to prove it's still a client account.
And it was the case that there were some banks that were better than others, wasn't it? I mean, famously, I don't know if you don't want to name or whatever, but they were still able to give those free banking, but those are just disappearing by the wayside, aren't they?
Yeah, if you look a lot of the social media, people are going to the classic high street banks and they're just refusing applications and then saying, oh, but this one particular bank, which our paper refers to the banks, are allowing you to open. But even now we're seeing patterns where they're changing the rules around the application and making it even more difficult.
What I liked about it, Glyn, was again, you're all here talking about very serious elements here, but you just mentioned it there. This has come off the back of actually, to put it into an Avengers origin story. This wasn't you sat in your ivory PropTech tower, was it? And thought there's a chat. This is you sat essentially from your lettings business perspective, and seeing this light bulb moment that this is what was going to happen.
For me, it was understanding how can we get that certainty, give agents that certainty that I can go and get an account. And the next part then, the certainty of keeping that account. If you imagine you go to a bank, they give you an account, 12 months later, they change it. The disruption of moving standing orders, tenants, going from one account to another, it's just staggering for a business. And like anything as an agent, the moment you disrupt the landlord's rental payments, they're on the phone.
Yeah. Well, and that's the bit that scares me most as an agent, that landlords have had, let's face it, a rough 5 years anyway, with changes to legislation that have all cost them money. The taxation regime has also changed as well. Imagine picking up the phone to the landlord who says, look, I don't care what happens, as long as my money's safe with you, turning around to them and saying, actually, I've got a bit of a problem with my bank account.
And I think what was interesting in the paper, when they talk about this, an account per landlord, because that's the only reason we'd phone the landlord, just to say, we need to open a client account for you. We need to keep that separate. The paper was really bringing forward just the scale of banking charges with this. It was just staggering.
Yeah, put some context around the actual charging element then, because this is the bit that kind of, even somebody as simple as me understood that that's a bit of an issue.
A lot of money. So most people seem to think, I get my business banking free, and in most cases you do. And if I got my client account and I keep the money there, I get that free. So the banks are just moving away from that model completely. They moved to a fee, £8 charge per month per account. So if you've got 100 client accounts...
I can do this maths, it's 800.
And then over 12 months?
No, you're fine. But okay, so I've got that reconciled in my head. So let's talk about now how it's
well,
moving.
what's the scariest part? That £8 the starting charge. So you've got £8 a month just to have the account. Then you charge 35p for the money in and the money out.
Yeah.
What we didn't realise, and the survey highlighted to us, there's a commercial banking element. So the banks go, the moment you have 100 accounts with us, you move into commercial banking, so we charge you more. So that all of a sudden they're charging you £22 a month. So 22 times 100.
But talking about the cost to an agent and some people running volume businesses are working on paper thin margins already.
Yeah.
There's a staggering jump up, isn't it, really, in terms of...
More so the north-south divides. Speaking to some of the agents and responding to the survey, one particular agent in question was based in Preston, and he just said the bank wants to charge me £8 per landlord, and my average fee to my landlord is £50-60. That margin is
a massive
huge.
chunk. Yeah.
And it's not like sometimes me preaching my wonderful PropTech hat. This will win you more listings, and it'll make you more efficient. This is ostensibly for the same service that you've had, isn't it?
It's a cost of doing business
It's
now.
just cost of doing
Cost
business.
of doing business.
So behind the scenes, when an agent's looking at getting separate bank accounts for a landlord, presumably though, there are ancillary costs that go with that, such as accounting charges, because your accountant's no longer looking at just one client account. They're going to have to look at potentially hundreds.
Yeah, potentially. And it does raise the question with CMP audits, because classically it's a client account, we're just going to audit it. How do we manage that? How do we fill out the audit forms for 100 accounts?
Didn't you say that from your experience talking to people, that's presenting a bit of a problem already?
Well, the white paper sort of goes into, is CMP required technically? Because the legislation focuses on an account, pooled funds. The moment you put money into separate accounts, it's no longer pooled. It's all very separate. So the sort of paper just goes in and says, are there questions that the CMP legislators need to answer with what the banks are doing?
CMP gives ultimately the client of an agent comfort that their funds are ring-fenced and that they're guaranteed. up to a certain point. So we only have to go back to 2008 to remember the queues of pensioners lining up outside the Northern Rock branches. And that obviously triggered a lot of fear amongst regular people that their own personal savings were at risk. But famously, commercial bank accounts have never had any guarantees at all.
I found that when you were again explaining that to me like a child earlier and bringing this Northern Rock, you know, that I couldn't believe that commercial had no cover.
Bank guarantee is only personal accounts. Business accounts, which includes client accounts, are not covered. So if Northern Rock did actually go pop, and the bank would then step in and cover funds, forget business accounts, forget client accounts, it wasn't covered that way. So from a banking perspective, no guarantees, no cover. CMP obviously step in with the insurance, which is critical from that side.
But I think we don't need to worry. I mean, there's one thing I've learned about this country and this government is that there is going to be a really easy right to protest, a right to complain, isn't it? And there's going to be some due process that's going to help people out. So when you're being rejected for these bank accounts, who can you go to, Glyn? And then we can, I think, shut this interview down, can't we? It's going to be, I'm pretty certain that there's a solution here.
The survey basically said there was no recourse. So agents who
keep rolling.
Agents who had their accounts closed, applications turned down, and going, I've answered all your requirements, I've ticked all your boxes, and you're still saying no. We're going to the financial ombudsman, who are coming back going, well, the banks can do
They
that.
could do what they want.
That's their choice. It's within their terms. They meet the same legislation as everyone. It's really up to them whether they give you an account or let you keep an account. You know, it's really up to the banks.
And did you say, is it 2 months that a lot of these people have been given to?
So what we find out, there's this real sort of fast, slow conflict going on. So a typical account notice period was 2 months. So most of the agents said, I got 2 months warning. Some got none. They literally came in on a Monday and the account was closed. They just hadn't been notified. But when you go and open an account, that takes 3 months.
So given the scale of the...
3 months is longer than 2 months, isn't it?
Just about. But the other point we did discover, which was quite shocking, was most agents, when they were applying to open an account, they were doing 3 applications.
So that's 3 lots of 3 months.
So I would apply to my first bank, get refused, apply to the second,
and then
get
wait
refused,
for it, yes.
apply to my third. So all of a sudden we're in this world of 9 months. And some of the banks require you to register with HMRC, and that can take 2 months. So a lot of these agents, and there were some examples where they didn't have a client account, they had a business account, but they had no choice. They were trying as fast as they could to get a new client account to be able to move those funds, but they were technically operating illegally at that point, which was, you know, you had no choice. As an agent, you have no choice to not receive rents and pay your landlords.
So given the scale of this and the fact that it's going to affect every agent, big or small, whoever needs to operate out of a client account is going to have this problem at some point.
Yeah, and even if you just got your CMP letter 6 months ago and you think, oh, fine.
You're on borrowed time, effectively.
Yeah, the review's going to come. The banks that really were at the top was the Lloyds, and these banks have Lloyds, RBS, NatWest and Barclays, but they also have the lion's share of all client accounts in the UK. They're also the banks that were closing the accounts.
That were doing the most of them.
Yeah, doing the most closures.
You've spoken about it as, I mean, it seems almost, well, it is incredibly cynical. But what would you describe it as the monetisation? Just talk us as the monetisation of the client account.
The elephant in the room piece that we.
Are you calling me the elephant in the room? Outrageous.
This is all driven by AML risk.
Yeah.
And when you actually look at the data, the only data I could get was the National Crime Agency report 2019 on all AML crime. So if you looked at all the industries, what estimate, letting agents wasn't even in there, estate agent was, you have a guess, out of all AML crime in 2019,
every industry.
of every industry, how much was estate agency?
3%.
3%.
Maybe 5%.
Estate agents came in at 0.13%. Estate agents, letting agents doesn't even get a mention. 98% of all AML crime was banks, building societies, financial institutions, solicitors and accountants. So the regulated businesses account for nearly all the crime. So the elephant in the room piece is there's very little AML crime and risk with letting agency. So I sort of stepped into the story, you know, I'm the tenant, so I've got to be in cahoots with the landlord, and I'm going to now pay some cash into my UK bank account and pay you via the agent. So we've got to be in cahoots, and I've got to launder money at a market rate of rent. It just doesn't happen. And you as an agent...
It's not particularly efficient as far as money laundering.
If we're looking at scams.
If we're looking at scams,
tune in for our next programme on how to do that more efficiently.
We've checked it, we've tested it. This isn't the way to do it.
It's going to take a long time, a long time. So it's a real elephant in the room piece. That, they're going, you need to get AML registered. We're doing this because AML risks, yet it's nothing. It's negligible.
So let's go to the ultimate endpoint of that. So you feel that actually this is nothing to do with this AML piece. This is really about, you've spoken about the actual money that could be generated, can't you?
We sort of the commercialisation of client accounting. If you break it down, they used to give us free business banking. And particularly since the pandemic, I don't know if you noticed, the banks have all come in and said, kind of ending free banking, kind of bringing in the monthly charges, bringing in the transaction fees. You go to the client account per landlord pricing model, that can, if you just take the stats, I picked the Office of National Statistics stat of 2017, how many registered deposits there were in England at that point, 2.2 million. Try and get a solid figure. If you just apply that £22 a month to those volumes, it's a £600 million.
Follow the money is basically the rule of thumb here, isn't it?
And that doesn't include the 35p charges in and out.
So huge money, huge scandal, and it's that iceberg just ahead of us, and we are veering towards it. What are the trade bodies within our industry saying? What are they advising their clients to do?
Well, in the survey, there's a real sort of strong sentiment. There was a couple of cases where agents were operating with a business account and their CMP provider knew they were being very sympathetic to that position, which I think is fantastic. They realised the bank gave you no options, it happened really quickly, you've been open and honest and you're trying to get another account. So some good support pieces there. But then there was a lot of sort of frustration with some members. They were going to their CMP providers and saying, the banks are doing this to me, how can you help, what should we do? And particularly, Property Mark was just sort of singled out on a couple of times where they were going to them and saying, well, if you can't get an account, you need to go and use our approved outsource provider because they can provide you an account and that way. So from that side, really challenging.
It's a solution, but it's also, it's fair to say, it's a solution that has a cost attached to it.
Yeah, management fees is a livelihood for an agent. Most agents, one branch, usually the owner does the accounting. It's a huge chunk of money. You start giving that up in banking fees per account or outsourcing, it's their livelihood. It's their livelihood. And I get the reasons why agents want to use outsourcing services, great, and those benefits, but if you're being forced because they can provide you a client account, that's taken away from that livelihood.
And so, Glyn, what is it that agents should be doing or can be doing? What are their options right now?
Help us.
Somebody's watching this. Somebody's watching this, and they're wondering, well, I don't want to wait till it's too late.
So now we know if they can shut you down in 2 months, and it can take 3 months. I would go and open more client accounts. Very simple, really obvious. Go to the different mainline banks now. Open up a second and a third account, and spread that risk, and operate some of the rents from each of the accounts.
But that's a stressful nightmare because I've divided up all my payment systems. I might have different payment systems with different banks, no universal login, my oversight over one account, security risks, there's all sorts there.
Stressful than the account being closed down in 60 days.
Well, it's a solution, but it's not a great solution. What we're doing there is almost planning for ultimate failure. Eventually, all those accounts that you've opened are going to be shut down. So you're only buying a little bit more time.
Plan B piece is speak to your bank about those individual client accounts. Really understand, do they offer it? Not all banks do. How much does it cost? Do I need to AML check on that side? Or speak to the outsource providers. So that can provide an account. What's the lead-in time? Again, what's the service? What's the cost? Does it work with my CRM? So that's kind of that second option.
Okay.
And then the third option, which is really what we focused on, is providing dedicated client accounts. So Calmony, been in the works for 2 years for us. It's a huge regulatory piece with the FCA to get approved. But we are now able to provide agents with a dedicated digital client account. It's not a platform, it's not a service. You get the account number and sort code. You get that certainty of getting that account as long as you pass all those AML checks, and you get the certainty of keeping that account. Every time you get that CMP letter request, you're not going to lose.
You know you've got that there.
You're not going to.
So
We've designed it specifically for the letting industry. And what we have wrapped up then is the payment services within it as well to help the ease of moving. So we've got what we call Pay Agent app, a standing order app that sends an invite to your tenants and tells them this is the standing order we need you to set up. And then once they authorise that through their open banking, their mobile banking app, we know back in Calmony whether the standing order's been set up or not. And then the final piece is we've wrapped up in that backs. You know, we were talking about .net, Barclays.net, that extra expense of being able to bulk upload. We've built that in. And because Calmony is what we call an EMI, it's 24/7, it's instant payment.
So that's an interesting aspect of this whole service, because for the skeptics out there, they're going to be thinking, well, hang on, what is the difference then between Calmony and a normal bank account? So in layman's terms, what is it?
Yeah, so Calmony, we're an electronic money institute. So the difference between us and a bank is a bank has a banking license. So the bank can use your money. You know, they've got to hold 12.5% cash reserve.
Twist.
They can lend it 10 times over.
Yeah.
EMIs, we can't. So that money sits in a bank account with the Bank of England on that side. So the fundamental difference, we don't have a banking license, so we can't lend and play with your money, but we have all the same banking services and features from backs and fast payments and all that.
So it's actually more secure because you can't lend my money out. It's sat there, it's ring fenced within the Bank of England, which I think it's fair to say still regarded as a safe pair of hands.
If something goes wrong there, we're all in trouble.
Okay.
We're all in trouble.
But you said as well, this has been 2 years in development, but from what you were saying before as well, obviously huge amount of dev time and everything else going into this, but actually the jumping through the legal hoops or the approval hoops has been the biggest ones to make sure that it is all thumbs up.
Absolutely, you don't just become electronic money, so you just don't come overnight. They've got to really understand the security.
So full client accounts aren't here anytime soon, then is what you're saying now.
It's quite challenging from that side. But it is important about those safeguards.
Of course
you know,
it is,
at the end of the day, as any bank, you know, you've got to make sure that you've got those safeguards and that whole safeguarding piece. And it's the question that people are opening accounts with us now going, how am I protected? And funny enough, with an EMI, you're more protected than the bank. You know, we said earlier, you're not covered if something goes wrong with the bank. With an EMI, the money, 100% with the Bank of England, plus the technology we use, they have to have a 2% cash reserve. So all the money they hold in their EMI accounts for their customers, they've got to hold 2%. So I actually say you're covered by 102%.
So it's even more secure.
More secure.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so what are the costs to an agent for signing up to this, and how?
I knew you couldn't hold back for long, could you?
Glyn's first piece of plan A is to open up as many bank accounts as I possibly can.
Yeah.
I want to open up a Calmony account. What's that going to cost?
We've looked at very much what the challenger banks and what we call the neobanks are doing, and we basically just a very straightforward 3 subscription piece. So you can open an account for free. And get 50 transactions for free, and you're up and running. So that's why I was saying, protect yourself, just open an account, have it ready.
Yeah.
And then it's 35 pence per transaction.
And that's pretty standard across the board, that.
Yeah, 35p is what Barclays, everyone charges on that top end. Second one, £40 a month, 150 transactions, and then 30p. And then the final subscription is £80 a month, 300 transactions, and then 25p. So we've just scaled it because obviously.
So really, somebody that's worried and just at this point hasn't got the issue, but is trying to protect themselves in the future, has got nothing to lose by opening one of these accounts.
You get all that banking piece, and you get the Go Cardless PayPal features that we built in there.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about that because that is a.
You're just going to apply now. Have you got your passport?
I wanted to talk to you about that. I've brought here my checkbook. So, because this is huge sometimes within the industry. We've got people that pay rent monthly. You've still got some people floating around out there that will pay weekly. But you have also got people that come along and they're paying maybe 6 months at a time, 12 months at a time. And the lettings agents out there will know what the pitfalls are and how to work it so that your client's best protected. But the point is when that amount of money hits a bank account, especially if you're taking it by card transaction, it can actually attract a very hefty credit card transaction fee as well, which if you're using a third party to handle those funds, a lot of people are
That's
using
right.
pre-tenancy processes, which are great. They collect the money, they make sure they arrive with you, but that's going to have a quite a massive cost, which you can't recover
No.
from either the tenant or the landlord in that case, and it will come off your management fee.
Can you put some context? Because you were talking, don't name them
Yeah,
obviously, but
so
you were talking about another agent
we
that we
heard,
were consulting
so,
for, weren't
so
we?
we heard a story this week where an agent had collected, I think it was a 6-month rental payment. It was somewhere in the region of, I think, about £22,000 altogether, but that had a £900 credit card fee on it, which is just
So really, that's all the current payment systems and structures is all based on card transactions. So you get charged 10p and then a percentage or 20p. So they really are early options, and that's why we're always trying to agents are handing out their client account bank numbers on emails to customers to say, please transfer so I don't get these big charges. Open banking is really one of those elements that's changing that. So the way payment apps requests work, I send you a request, and with our pay agent, our payment app, it comes in and says, hi Simon, and we break it down, can you pay us £100 holding fee, and we need your £500 rent, a £600 deposit. You've got a choice then to do that by open banking transfer or cards. People at the end of the day sometimes need to pay by debit or credit cards. The difference with open banking then is you go by open banking, you pick your bank, all that information, your account, client account number, all the money, the references are all handed over to their online banking, and all you do is authorise. Open banking transactions are just a fixed price. So for us, we would charge, depending on what package you're on, if you're on the free pack, we charge you £1. If you're on the £80 package, we charge you 80p. So that
agent would be potentially saving £899 there in fees. But from a cybersecurity point of view, all these phishing scams that you hear of are where you do get an email from somebody that you think you trust that says, look, this is the client account. I know of landlords, for instance, who've had an email from an agent that says, we've carried out repair on your boiler, we've not got enough funds in the account right now to cover this, can you send us 200 quid or whatever it is, and it's gone to someone else.
So open banking payment requests is a protocol. So where most of those are going to saying, please put your card details in here, this is a secure handshake with your mobile banking app. And if your mobile banking app goes, I don't know who you are, then what?
Right, let's stop there. I think this is a perfect time to take a break, and then we're going to come back and deal in a bit more detail about how Calmony can help agents. Thank you.